The Orion transfer station hung like a gleaming jewel against the velvet backdrop of space, its massive crystalline structures catching the light of distant stars. Captain Mara Nova stood at the viewport of her diplomatic vessel, the Aegis, watching as docking procedures commenced. Her reflection stared back at her, dark eyes set in a face framed by close-cropped black hair. The blue uniform of the Galactic Alliance's diplomatic corps, crisp against her olive skin. "Captain, we've received clearance," Lieutenant Kira Sato announced from her station. "Docking in 15 minutes." Mara nodded, her gaze still fixed on the station. The year 2475 marked 3 decades of her service as a reconciler, humanity's most valued role in the Alliance. After the Great Contact of 2389, humans had surprised the galactic community not with superior technology or military might, but with an uncanny ability to mediate conflicts between vastly different species. This talent had earned them a unique position, the peacekeepers of the stars. "Is the delegation prepared?" Mara asked, turning from the viewport. "Yes, Captain," Kira replied. "Ambassador Patel will join us at the airlock." Mara smiled. Another day. Another diplomatic mission. The Aegis had been dispatched to Orion Station to facilitate negotiations between the aquatic Melosians and the silicon-based Thrak, 2 species whose fundamental biology made communication challenging. Just another day's work for humanity's finest diplomats. Little did she know that the universe was about to remind humanity of a heritage they had long forgotten. The Aegis docked smoothly, magnetic clamps securing the vessel to Orion Station with practiced precision. As the airlock cycled open, Ambassador Rohan Patel stepped forward, his traditional Indian-inspired formal wear modified with the silver insignia of the Alliance. "Captain Nova," he greeted with a slight bow. "The Melosian representatives have already arrived. The Thrak delegation is expected within the hour." "Excellent," Mara replied. "I've reviewed both briefs. The water rights dispute seems straightforward enough." A flicker of amusement crossed Patel's face. "With all due respect, Captain, nothing involving the Thrak is ever straightforward." Mara was about to respond when her communication implant chimed softly in her ear. She raised a hand, signaling for a moment. "Captain Nova," she answered subvocally. "Captain, urgent transmission from Alliance Command," came the voice of Communications Officer Liu. "Priority Alpha." Mara's expression remained neutral, but her pulse quickened. Priority Alpha meant only one thing: a crisis that threatened the fragile peace of the Alliance. "Route it to my personal terminal," she ordered. "Ambassador, please proceed to the conference chamber. I'll join you shortly." As Patel nodded and continued with the delegation, Mara turned and strode quickly back toward the ship's command center. The doors slid open at her approach, and she moved directly to the secure terminal. The screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Admiral Kazimir Volkov, Supreme Commander of Alliance Forces. His weathered features and silver hair spoke of decades of service, but it was the unmistakable tension in his eyes that caught Mara's attention. "Captain Nova," he began without preamble. "We have a situation on Arcafu. The colony has gone silent, and the last transmission we received." He paused, and Mara could see him struggling to maintain his composure. The last transmission indicated they were under attack, brutal, methodical, and unlike anything we've encountered before. Mara's mind raced. Arcafu was a peaceful agricultural world, home to both human colonists and the native Arcan species, a gentle, empathic race known for their advanced botanical knowledge. "What forces are closest?" she asked, already calculating travel times. "That's why I'm contacting you," Volkov replied. "The Aegis is the nearest Alliance vessel with a human crew. All other ships in the sector would take days to respond." Mara understood the implication. "Sir, the Aegis is a diplomatic vessel. We're not equipped for—" "I'm not asking you to engage, Captain." Volkov interrupted. I need you to assess the situation and report back. If the attackers are still present, maintain distance and observe only. Reinforcements will be dispatched immediately. But I need eyes on the ground now. Mara straightened. Understood, Admiral. We'll set course immediately. As the transmission ended, Mara stood motionless for a moment, processing the implications. In her 30 years of service, she had never encountered a situation that required military intervention. The Alliance had maintained peace for generations, with only minor skirmishes quickly contained by diplomatic channels. Officer Liu, she called, inform Ambassador Patel that we've been diverted on urgent Alliance business. Then notify the crew. We depart for Arca 4 immediately. Yes, Captain, Liu responded, her fingers already dancing across her console. As Mara moved to the captain's chair, she felt an odd sensation, a tingling at the base of her skull, a pressure behind her eyes. For a fleeting moment, images flashed through her mind. Battlefield panoramas, strategies, tactics she had never studied. She gripped the armrest to steady herself, blinking away the strange vision. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Jackson's concerned voice pulled her back to the present. Are you all right? Mara nodded, the sensation already fading. Fine, Commander. Plot a course for Arca 4, maximum speed. As the Aegis disengaged from Orion Station and accelerated toward the jump point, Mara couldn't shake the feeling that something ancient and powerful was stirring, not just in the galaxy, but within herself. The journey to Arca 4 took 16 hours, even pushing the Aegis's engines beyond recommended parameters. 16 hours during which Mara briefed her crew, reviewed what little intelligence they had, and tried to ignore the increasingly frequent flashes of battlefield insight that seemed to be emerging unbidden from some forgotten corner of her mind. As they dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the green-blue sphere of Arca 4 filled the view screen. From orbit, everything appeared normal, the vast agricultural fields creating patchwork patterns across the continents. The single modest spaceport near the main settlement. Life signs, Mara asked, leaning forward in her chair. Science Officer Elian Frost frowned at his console. Scattered and fewer than expected. Captain, I'm reading approximately 2,000 signatures, primarily clustered in the central settlement and outlying areas. That's less than a quarter of the expected population. A heavy silence fell over the bridge. The implications were clear. If the readings were accurate, thousands of colonists and native Arcans had perished. Any signs of vessels in orbit or on the surface? Mara asked. Negative, Captain, replied Tactical Officer Reyes. No unidentified ships detected. However, I am picking up debris in low orbit consistent with destroyed spacecraft. Mara's jaw tightened. Composition of the debris? Reyes worked her console for a moment. Unknown, Captain. Not matching any Alliance registry. So the attackers suffered losses as well, Mara murmured. She stood. Decision made. Prepare a landing party. I want a security detail, medical personnel, and science officers. Commander Jackson, you'll remain on the Aegis with a skeleton crew, ready to extract us if necessary. Captain, Jackson protested. With respect, regulations state that in potentially hostile territory, the commanding officer should... I'm aware of regulations, Commander. Mara cut him off. But I need my most experienced officer in command of this ship if things go sideways. Besides, she added with a grim smile, I have a feeling I need to see this for myself. As the shuttle descended through Arca 4's atmosphere, Mara gazed out at the landscape below. Even from this height, the devastation was evident. Vast swathes of the meticulously maintained agricultural fields had been scorched, and plumes of smoke still rose from several locations. The shuttle touched down half a kilometer from the main settlement, in a clearing that showed minimal damage. Mara led her team out, the air of Arca 4 filling her lungs, tinged with the acrid smell of burnt vegetation and something else. Something metallic and unsettlingly familiar. "Secure perimeter," she ordered the security detail. "Dr. Frost, begin scanning for survivors. Dr. Lin, prepare to receive casualties." As her team moved with practiced efficiency, Mara surveyed their surroundings. The trees near the landing site, the famous silver-barked sentinels of Arcafor, stood unharmed, their leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. But beyond them, she could see the blackened ruins of what had once been outlying farms. "Captain," called Security Chief Ortiz, pointing toward the settlement. "Movement." Mara turned, hand instinctively moving to her sidearm. A standard-issue stun pistol. The only weapons the Aegis carried. Through the trees, a figure was approaching, moving with a halting gait. As it drew closer, Mara could make out the distinctive blue-tinted skin and elongated limbs of an Arkan. The being was female, her normally iridescent skin dulled with dust and what appeared to be dried fluid of various colors. Most striking were her eyes, wide, traumatized, and fixed on Mara with desperate recognition. "Human," the Arkan gasped in Alliance Standard. "The temple door! They kicked the temple door!" Then she collapsed. Dr. Lin rushed forward, medical scanner already in hand. "She's in shock," he reported. "Multiple lacerations. Evidence of extreme exertion, severe dehydration." "Stabilize her," Mara ordered, kneeling beside the fallen Arkan. "What's your name?" she asked gently. The Arkan's eyes fluttered. "Asha," she whispered. Was communications liaison." "Asha, what happened here? Who attacked you?" The Arkan trembled. "They came without warning. Ships. Like nothing in Alliance registry. They landed. They demanded." Her voice broke. "They demanded to see the human warriors. Said we were hiding them." Mara exchanged puzzled glances with her officers. "There are no warriors stationed on Arcafu. This is an agricultural colony." Asha's eyes widened. "That's what we told them. They said they would make the warriors show themselves." Her hand clutched Mara's wrist with surprising strength. "And then they started killing. Methodically. Row by row of our people." Dr. Lin administered a stabilizing agent, and Asha's breathing became more regular. "The colonists fought back," she continued. "At first with tools, farm implements. They were slaughtered. But then—" her voice dropped to a whisper. "Then it happened." "What happened?" Mara pressed gently. "Some of the humans changed. Their eyes, their movements, like nothing I've ever seen. One moment they were farmers, scientists, teachers. The next—" Asha shuddered. "The next, they were something else. Something terrible and beautiful." Mara felt the tingling at the base of her skull intensify. "How did they change?" "They moved too fast, fought too well. Some glowed with a pale blue light. They killed the invaders, tore them apart with their bare hands, with farming tools turned to weapons, with impossible skill." Asha's eyes grew distant. "The invaders retreated. But by then, most of us were already gone. And the humans who had changed. Many collapsed afterward. Some died. Others became catatonic." Mara stood slowly, her mind racing. "Asha, who were the attackers? Did you recognize their species?" The Arkan's expression darkened. "Yes. They called themselves the Zharkoth. They said they were here to wake the sleeping gods and then destroy them while they were still disoriented." A chill ran down Mara's spine. The Zharkoth were not members of the Alliance. They were a warrior species from the Outer Rim, largely isolationist and rarely encountered. But what did they mean by sleeping gods? "Captain," called Dr. Frost from several meters away. "You need to see this." Mara moved to join him, leaving Asha in Dr. Lin's care. Frost stood at the edge of a clearing, his scanner held loosely at his side, his face pale. As Mara stepped into the clearing, She understood his reaction. Bodies littered the ground. Most were clearly Zarkoth, their crimson-scaled bodies unmistakable. They had been killed with brutal efficiency. Some showed evidence of precisely targeted blows. Others had been literally torn apart. But what caught Mara's attention were the human bodies interspersed among the fallen Zarkoth. About a dozen colonists lay dead. But unlike the violent ends met by the attackers, these humans appeared to have simply collapsed. Their faces were peaceful, almost serene. Dr. Frost moved to the nearest human body and knelt beside it. "Preliminary scan shows massive neural overload," he reported. "It's as if their brains simply burned out." As Mara surveyed the grisly scene, that strange pressure in her skull intensified. Suddenly, she wasn't seeing the clearing on Arca 4 anymore. She was seeing a battlefield from millennia ago. Human warriors moved with impossible speed and precision, their eyes glowing with an unearthly blue light, cutting down enemies who fled before them in terror. The vision was gone as quickly as it had come, leaving Mara disoriented and gripping a nearby tree for support. "Captain!" Frost was at her side immediately. Scanner raised. Mara waved him off. "I'm fine," she insisted, though she was far from certain that was true. "We need to reach the main settlement, find survivors, and establish what exactly happened here." As her team moved cautiously toward the colony's center, Mara activated her comm. "Nova to Aegis. Commander Jackson, we have a situation down here. Prepare to receive a preliminary report and transmit to Alliance Command immediately." The response was immediate. "Understood, Captain. Standing by." Mara described what they had found, including Asha's account of the attack and the mysterious transformation of some human colonists. As she spoke, they reached the outskirts of the main settlement. The destruction here was even more pronounced. Buildings had been reduced to rubble. Vehicles lay overturned and scorched. Bodies, human, Arkan, and Zarkoth, littered the streets. But, unlike the clearing, here the casualties seemed more random, speaking to the chaotic nature of the initial attack. "Life signs ahead," reported one of the security officers, checking his scanner. "Multiple signatures, barricaded in what appears to be the colony's administrative center." "Approach with caution," Mara ordered. "Non-threatening posture. They've been through enough trauma." As they neared the three-story building that served as the colony's headquarters, Mara could see makeshift defenses had been erected, furniture piled against doors and windows, improvised weapons positioned at strategic points. "This is Captain Mara Nova of the Alliance vessel Aegis," she called out. "We're responding to your distress signal. We're here to help." For a long moment, there was silence. Then a voice called back, "Prove your alliance." Mara stepped forward, hands raised to show she carried no weapons. "I'm unarmed. I'm a reconciler. We received your distress call and came as quickly as we could." A panel in one of the barricaded doors slid open, and a human face peered out, haggard, exhausted, but alert. The man studied Mara for a moment, then nodded. "Get your people inside. Captain, quickly. They might come back." The interior of the administrative building had been converted into a combination hospital and fortress. Approximately 200 survivors, humans and Arkans alike, had taken refuge here. Many were wounded, being treated by the colony's medical staff with limited supplies. Others stood guard at windows and doors, armed with everything from standard-issue energy pistols to kitchen knives. The man who had admitted them introduced himself as Colonel Ryan Torres, retired Alliance military and head of colony security. "We weren't prepared for this," Torres said, leading Mara to a makeshift command center in what had once been the colony administrator's office. "This was a peaceful settlement. Our security force consisted of me and 5 officers with basic training, armed with standard non-lethal weapons." "Tell me what happened," Mara urged, nodding for Dr. Lin to begin assisting the colonial medical staff. Torres ran a hand through his graying hair. 3 days ago, they appeared in orbit. 6 ships, configuration unknown. They established communication, demanded we turn over our warriors. When we explained we had none, they attacked. His voice grew hollow. They were methodical. They started with the outlying farms, working their way inward. They separated humans from Archons, killed the Archons immediately, and he swallowed hard. They tortured the humans, said they were testing them. Testing for what? Mara asked, though a growing dread in her stomach suggested she already knew. For what they called the awakening, Torres replied. They seemed to believe that under sufficient stress, humans would reveal some kind of hidden ability. His eyes met Mara's. And the hell of it is, Captain, they were right. He led her to a terminal and pulled up security footage. The video showed a group of human colonists cornered by Zarkoth warriors. The aliens were imposing, 2.5 meters tall, reptilian, armed with energy weapons and bladed instruments. As Mara watched, one of the colonists, a middle-aged woman who looked like she might have been a teacher or administrator, was grabbed by a Zarkoth. The alien raised a wicked-looking blade. And then it happened. The woman's eyes flared with blue light. Her movements became a blur. In seconds, she had disarmed the Zarkoth, broken its arm, and driven its own blade through its throat. She turned to the others, moving with impossible speed and precision, cutting down 3 more before the recording ended abruptly. What happened to her? Mara asked, her mouth dry. Torres's expression was grim. She killed 7 more before collapsing. Brain hemorrhage. According to our doctor, she was dead before she hit the ground. And there were others like her? Torres nodded. 17 confirmed cases, different ages, different backgrounds. The only common factor was they were all human. Some survived the transformation. They're sedated now. We found that keeping them unconscious prevents further episodes. Mara felt that pressure behind her eyes building again. Colonel, does the phrase temple door mean anything to you? Torres frowned. No, why? The Archon survivor we found mentioned it. Said the Zarkoth had kicked the temple door. Before Torres could respond, the building shook with a tremendous impact. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and alarms began to sound. They're back, Torres said, reaching for a weapon. Get your people ready, Captain. This isn't a diplomatic situation anymore. As Mara rushed to organize her team, the pressure in her skull became almost unbearable. Images flashed through her mind faster than she could process. Battle formations, weapon specifications, tactical analyses of the building's defensive capabilities. And something else, a memory that wasn't hers. A voice, ancient and powerful, whispering, "The door is open. The gods of war awaken." When the Zarkoth breached the building's defenses 10 minutes later, they found not a group of terrified colonists, but an organized resistance. And at its center stood Mara Nova, her eyes glowing with that same pale blue light, directing the defense with uncanny precision. Mara would later have only fragmented memories of the battle. She remembered moving faster than should have been possible, her body responding to threats before her conscious mind could even process them. She remembered the looks of shock on the faces of the Zarkoth as they encountered not helpless colonists, but coordinated, lethal resistance. Most of all, she remembered the knowledge that flooded her mind, tactics and strategies from 1,000 ancient battlefields, the weight of countless conflicts spanning back to Earth's earliest civilizations. The Zarkoth were driven back, retreating to their ships with heavy losses. As the last of them fled, Mara felt the strange energy that had possessed her begin to ebb. The blue glow faded from her vision, and exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. She would have collapsed if Colonel Torres hadn't caught her. "Easy, Captain," he said, lowering her gently to a seat. "I've seen what happens when you push it too far." Mara's head pounded, but her thoughts were clearing. What? What happened to me? Torres studied her with a mixture of awe and concern. The same thing that happened to the others. But you controlled it, directed it. Before Mara could respond, her comm chimed. Captain! Commander Jackson's voice was urgent. The Zarkoth vessels are powering weapons. They're targeting the colony from orbit. Mara tried to stand but found her legs wouldn't support her. Aegis, intercept! We're already moving to position, Jackson replied. But Captain, we're a diplomatic vessel. Our shields won't hold against a military assault. Mara closed her eyes, focusing through the pounding in her skull. The tactical information was still there, accessible now, even without the blue glow. Target their propulsion systems, she ordered. Their shield configuration leaves a vulnerability at the aft junction. One precise hit should disable their ability to maneuver without destroying the vessels. There was a moment of stunned silence from the comm. Aye, Captain, Jackson finally responded. Targeting, firing. Minutes later, Jackson's voice returned, laced with disbelief. Direct hits on all 6 vessels. Captain, they're disabled and they're retreating using auxiliary power. Slow, but they're moving out of weapons range. Mara nodded, unsurprised. The knowledge in her mind had been certain, precise. Maintain vigilance, Commander, and contact Alliance Command. We need reinforcements here immediately. As she closed the communication, Mara became aware that everyone in the room was staring at her. Her crew, the colonists, Colonel Torres. Their expressions ranged from awe to fear. How did you know about the shield vulnerability? Torres asked quietly. Mara shook her head. I don't know, I just knew. She looked up at him. What's happening to us, Colonel? Torres sighed heavily. I have a theory, but it sounds insane. After what I just experienced, I'm open to insane theories. Torres nodded toward Dr. Frost, who had been scanning Mara discreetly. Your science officer might be able to confirm it. I think we're experiencing the activation of dormant genetic material. Something in our DNA that's been there all along but inactive until now. Dr. Frost frowned at his scanner. There are significant anomalies in the captain's neural patterns and genetic expression. Some gene sequences appear to have rearranged themselves. He looked up, bewildered. I've never seen anything like it. The Zarkoth called us sleeping gods, Mara said slowly. They said they came to wake us and then destroy us while we were disoriented. They knew, Torres said grimly. Somehow, they knew what humans really are, what we're capable of becoming. And what is that exactly? Mara asked. Torres met her gaze steadily. War gods, Captain, living weapons of unimaginable power. The days that followed were a blur of activity. Alliance reinforcements arrived within 48 hours. 3 military vessels accompanied by the medical ship Asclepius. The wounded were treated. The dead were respectfully collected for proper rites. And the colony began the long process of rebuilding. But for Mara and the 17 surviving colonists who had experienced the awakening, a different kind of reconstruction was necessary. Under the guidance of Dr. Frost and specialists from the Asclepius, they began to understand the transformation they had undergone. It appears to be a form of genetic memory, Dr. Frost explained during a briefing in the Aegis's conference room, combined with physical enhancements that defy our current understanding of human capabilities. The holographic display showed a complex DNA strand rotating slowly in the center of the table. Certain sections were highlighted in pulsing blue. These sequences, Frost continued, were present in all human DNA but dormant. The extreme stress of the attack somehow activated them, or, in the parlance of the Arkan survivor, kicked open the temple door. And once activated, they can't be deactivated? Mara asked. Though her initial collapse had passed, she still felt different. Heightened awareness, faster reflexes, and most disconcertingly, access to military knowledge she had never studied. "It's more complicated than that," Frost replied. "The activation appears to be permanent, but the expression of these abilities can be controlled with training. Those who survive the awakening are learning to access the abilities selectively, without triggering the neural overload that killed the others." Admiral Volkov, who had arrived with the reinforcements, frowned deeply. "And the source of this genetic memory? These enhancements?" Frost hesitated. "That's where the data becomes speculative, Admiral, based on comparative analysis and the age of these gene sequences." He took a deep breath. "They appear to be engineered, artificially introduced into the human genome, perhaps hundreds of thousands of years ago." A stunned silence fell over the room. "You're suggesting that something, modified humanity in our prehistoric past?" Ambassador Patel, who had insisted on joining the mission once he learned of the crisis, looked both fascinated and disturbed. "Created us to be weapons or defenders," Mara suggested quietly. The knowledge that had flooded her mind hadn't been solely focused on killing. There had been protective strategies, defensive formations, ways to minimize casualties while maximizing effectiveness. "Whatever the purpose," Admiral Volkov said, "we now face an immediate crisis. If the Zharkoth know about this aspect of human biology, others may discover it as well. The balance of power in the Alliance could shift dramatically." "Not necessarily," Mara countered. "Humanity has always valued our role as reconcilers, as peacekeepers. This doesn't change that fundamental aspect of our character." "Doesn't it?" Volkov challenged. "You experienced it, Captain. The rush of power, the combat effectiveness. Don't tell me there wasn't a part of you that exulted in it." Mara couldn't deny it. There had been a primal satisfaction in the awakening, a sense of rightness that was as disturbing as it was compelling. "The point," Ambassador Patel interjected smoothly, "is not what we might become, but what we choose to be." He turned to Admiral Volkov. "I propose we keep this information classified at the highest level. The survivors of Arca-4 should be given the support they need to control these abilities, and research should continue under strict security protocols." "And if we're attacked again," Volkov demanded, "if another species decides to target human colonies to eliminate this potential threat?" "Then we will defend ourselves," Mara said firmly. "As we just did. But we will not become aggressors. We will not abandon the principles that have defined humanity's role in the Alliance." The debate continued for hours, but eventually, a consensus emerged. The events on Arca-4 would be classified. The survivors would be offered support and training, and the Alliance would discreetly enhance the defenses of human settlements without revealing the true reason why. As the meeting concluded, Mara found herself standing alone at the viewport, watching as shuttles ferried supplies and personnel to the colony below. She sensed, rather than heard, Ambassador Patel approach. "Troubled thoughts, Captain?" he asked, moving to stand beside her. Mara smiled faintly. "Is it that obvious?" "To a trained diplomat? Yes." He studied her profile. "You're concerned about the implications of what we've discovered." "Wouldn't you be?" she replied. "Everything we thought we knew about human history, about our place in the universe, it's all been called into question." Patel nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps. Or perhaps this revelation simply adds a new dimension to an old truth." "What truth is that?" "That humanity has always contained multitudes," he said. "The capacity for violence and the desire for peace. The impulse to destroy and the drive to create." He gestured toward the planet below. What happened on Arca-4 wasn't just about awakened combat abilities. It was about humans choosing to use those abilities to protect others, even at the cost of their own lives. Mara considered this. "You think we can integrate this new aspect of ourselves without losing who we are?" "I believe we must," Patel replied simply. "Because the temple door, as our Arkan friend called it, cannot be closed again." 3 months later, Mara stood once again on the bridge of the Aegis, watching as the ship approached Orion Station. The mission to Arca 4 had changed everything, and nothing. On the surface, life had returned to normal. The Aegis had resumed its diplomatic duties. Mara had continued to serve as a reconciler, mediating disputes between alliance species. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, profound changes were unfolding. Across human space, quietly and without public announcement, training programs had been established for those who had experienced the awakening. Under the guidance of specialists like Dr. Frost, these individuals, now numbering in the hundreds as more cases were identified, were learning to control their abilities, to access the genetic memory without succumbing to its overwhelming power. Mara herself had spent weeks at a secret facility on Earth's moon, working with the best minds in human neuroscience to understand her transformation. She had learned to call upon the enhanced reflexes, the tactical knowledge, the physical capabilities, and, more importantly, to suppress them when they weren't needed. "Captain," Lieutenant Sato called from her station. "Incoming transmission from Admiral Volkov. Priority Alpha." Mara felt a chill. The last Priority Alpha communication had led them to Arca 4. "Put it through to my ready room," she ordered, already moving. The Admiral's face appeared on her private terminal, his expression grave. "Captain Nova, we have a situation at Orion Station. The Zharkoth have returned, not with a military fleet, but with a diplomatic vessel. They're requesting formal contact with the Alliance Council." Mara's pulse quickened. "Their intentions?" "Unknown, but they've specifically requested your presence at the negotiations." Volkov's eyes narrowed. "They're calling you the Awakened One." The implications were clear. The Zharkoth knew what had happened on Arca 4. They recognized Mara's unique status as one who had controlled the awakening. "This could be a trap," she said carefully. "Undoubtedly," Volkov agreed. "But it could also be an opportunity to understand why they targeted Arca 4, what they know about human origins, and perhaps even to establish a peace that prevents further attacks." Mara nodded slowly. "I'll need Colonel Torres from Arca 4 and Dr. Frost at the negotiations." "Already arranged. They'll meet you at Orion Station." Volkov hesitated. "Captain, the Alliance Council is divided on how to proceed. Some members are advocating for a preemptive strike against the Zharkoth fleet. Others want to expose the truth about human abilities to the entire Alliance, arguing that transparency is our best defense." "And what do you recommend, Admiral?" A ghost of a smile crossed Volkov's face. "I recommend we follow the path that has served humanity well for generations. We reconcile, we find common ground, we build peace." His expression sobered. "But we do so from a position of strength and with clear eyes about the risks." "Understood," Mara replied. "We'll dock at Orion Station in 6 hours." As the transmission ended, Mara remained seated, her thoughts turbulent. The pressure at the base of her skull, now a familiar companion, pulsed gently, offering tactical assessments of the situation, potential threats, defensive strategies. But alongside these martial insights came something else: diplomatic approaches, negotiation tactics, ways to find common ground, even with a species as aggressive as the Zharkoth. The awakening, it seemed, had enhanced not just humanity's capacity for war, but all aspects of their intelligence. When the Aegis docked at Orion Station, Mara found a reception committee waiting. Ambassador Patel stood alongside Colonel Torres and Dr. Frost, their expressions a mixture of determination and concern. "The Zharkoth delegation arrived an hour ago," Patel informed her as they walked briskly through the station's corridors. "Their ambassador, if that's the right term, is named Kaljar. He claims to be a direct descendant of the commander who led the attack on Arca 4. "What do we know about their cultural structure?" Mara asked. "Hierarchical, clan-based, with leadership determined through ritual combat," Torres replied. They value strength above all else, but they also have a complex honor code. Breaking one's word is punishable by death. Mara nodded, filing away the information. And the setting for the negotiations? The Central Council Chamber, Patel said. Neutral ground, open sight lines, multiple exit points. Alliance security is present but discreet. As they approached the chamber, Mara felt a surge of that strange energy, responding to the potential threat ahead. She took a deep breath, centering herself as she had been trained, keeping the power balanced and controlled. The doors slid open, revealing the vast circular room that served as the heart of Alliance governance. Around a crescent-shaped table sat representatives of the major Alliance species, the sinuous Melosians, the crystalline Thrak, the empathic Archons, and a dozen others. And opposite them, at a separate table, sat the Zarkoth delegation. Even seated, they were imposing, towering reptilian forms clad in armor that seemed both ceremonial and functional. Their scaled skin ranged from deep crimson to burnished gold, and their eyes, vertical-pupiled and unblinking, fixed on Mara the moment she entered. The leader, distinguishable by the elaborate crest that rose from his head, stood as Mara approached. He towered over her, nearly 3 meters tall, his powerful frame rippling with muscle beneath his scales. "The Awakened One approaches," he announced in surprisingly fluid Alliance standard. "She who carries the legacy of the Creators in her blood." Mara met his gaze steadily. "I am Captain Mara Nova of the Alliance vessel Aegis. I understand you requested my presence. Ambassador Kaljar." A sound emerged from the Zarkoth's throat, something between a hiss and a laugh. "Not Ambassador, Huntmaster. And yes, I demanded your presence because only you can speak for what humanity truly is." Murmurs rippled through the Alliance representatives. Most were unaware of what had transpired on Arkafu, the details classified at the highest levels. "I speak for humanity as it chooses to be," Mara replied carefully. "A member of this alliance, committed to peace and cooperation among all species." Kaljar's crest flared, displaying vibrant patterns of red and gold. "Pretty words that hide an ancient truth. Your kind were not created for peace, human. You were forged as weapons by those who came before, the architects of the galactic order, the beings your primitive ancestors worshipped as gods." The chamber erupted in confused discussions. Mara raised a hand, and surprisingly, silence fell. "You claim to know the origin of humanity," she said. "Yet you attacked a peaceful colony, killed innocent civilians. These are not the actions of someone seeking to share knowledge." "We sought to expose your deception," Kaljar countered. "For millennia, the Zarkoth have preserved the true history of this galaxy, a history the Alliance willfully ignores. A history that tells of a time when the architects ruled, when they created servant species for specific purposes." His gaze swept the chamber. "The Melosians for terraforming, the Thrak for mining and construction." His eyes returned to Mara. "And humans. Humans were created for war." "If that's true," Mara asked, "why would these architects create a species then leave them dormant? Why engineer a weapon you never intend to use?" "Who says they didn't use you?" Kaljar retorted. "The ancient texts speak of a great rebellion, of servant species rising against their creators. In the final battles, human warriors were deployed against other rebellious creations. They were devastating, unstoppable killing machines that tore through enemy forces like cosmic fire." Mara felt the pressure in her skull building as fragments of memory, genetic memory, seemed to align with Kaljar's words. Flashes of ancient battlefields, of humans moving with that same blue glow, fighting alongside tall, luminous beings against monstrous opponents. "But the war ended," Kaljar continued. "The architects were defeated, or departed, and they left behind their weapons, deactivated but intact. The genetic keys turned to the off position, but still present in your DNA. A sleeping arsenal, waiting for the right moment to awaken." If you believe this, Torres interjected, stepping forward, why attack us? Why not approach the Alliance diplomatically with your concerns? Kaljar's crest flattened against his skull. Because we have watched for 10,000 years as species after species forgot their origins, forgot the danger that humans represent. We have maintained the vigil while others grew complacent. His voice rose. We acted because the signs were clear. Humans were beginning to awaken naturally. The genetic locks were deteriorating. We sought to control the process, to trigger the awakening under conditions where we could eliminate the threat before it spread. And yet you failed, Mara said quietly. Those who awakened on Arca 4 defeated your forces. I defeated your forces. Yes, Kaljar admitted, surprising her with his frankness. You proved stronger than anticipated, which is why we now stand before the Alliance with the truth. If we cannot eliminate the threat, we will expose it. The chamber had grown deathly quiet, all eyes moving between Mara and the towering Zarkoth. What exactly do you want? Mara asked. Acknowledgement of what humans truly are. Kaljar replied immediately. Restrictions on human settlements and activities. Monitoring of all human bloodlines for signs of awakening. And those who have already awakened, like you, Captain, to be placed in stasis for the safety of all. Before Mara could respond, Ambassador Patel stepped forward. The Alliance does not imprison species based on their biological potential, he said firmly. Nor do we judge members on what they might become, rather than what they choose to be. Naive, Kaljar sneered. You've invited wolves into your flock and called them shepherds. No, Mara countered, a new clarity filling her mind. You've misunderstood the most fundamental aspect of humanity. Yes, we may have been created as weapons, but we evolved beyond our original programming. We developed consciousness, empathy, free will. She stepped closer to Kaljar, feeling the energy within her, controlled now, balanced. The same genetic package that gives us combat abilities also gives us the capacity for diplomacy, for empathy, for reconciliation. We're not just war gods, Huntmaster. We're complex beings capable of choice. Pretty justifications, Kaljar dismissed. But the evidence speaks for itself. Given sufficient provocation, humans revert to their core programming. You become the weapons you were designed to be. On Arca 4, Mara agreed. Humans awaken to defend themselves and others from slaughter. Not to conquer, not to dominate, but to protect. She turned to address the entire chamber. If humanity possesses these abilities, and I neither confirm nor deny the Zarkoth's claims, then we offer them in service to the Alliance, as we have offered our diplomatic skills for generations, not as conquerors, but as defenders, not as gods of war, but as guardians of peace. A ripple of reaction passed through the assembled representatives. Surprise, consideration, cautious approval. Kaljar's crest flared again, this time in what appeared to be anger. Words, he spat. Empty promises from a species designed for deception as well as destruction. Then let us prove ourselves through actions, Mara proposed. The Zarkoth attacked an Alliance colony without provocation. By our laws, this would justify significant retaliation. She paused, letting the implication sink in. Yet we propose peace. We offer reconciliation, not from weakness, but from strength. Not because we must, but because we choose to. She turned to the Alliance representatives. I propose a commission to investigate the Zarkoth's claims about galactic history, about the architects, about the origins of all our species. Knowledge, not suppression, should guide our path forward. The senior Melosian representative, Ambassador Niftal, rose from her seat, her fluid body undulating gracefully. The delegation from Earth speaks wisdom. If there is truth to these claims of ancient origins, All Alliance species deserve to know it, not just humanity, but all of us who may have been shaped by these architects. One by one, other representatives voiced their agreement. Even the Arkan delegate, whose people had suffered most in the attack, nodded his assent. Kaljar watched the proceedings with narrowed eyes. And if this commission confirms our claims, what then? Then we face that truth together. Mara replied simply. As an alliance, not as enemies, but as descendants of a shared cosmic history, each evolved beyond our original design, each capable of determining our own destiny. The Zarkoth Huntmaster studied her for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he inclined his massive head in what might have been respect. You are not what we expected. Awakened one, he admitted. Perhaps there is more to humans than our ancient texts suggest. His crest flattened, and then rose again in a complex pattern. The Zarkoth will participate in this commission. We will share our knowledge, and we will observe humanity closely to see if your actions match your words. That seems fair, Mara acknowledged. And in return, the Alliance will investigate the attack on Arkafu as an isolated incident, rather than an act of war, provided there are no further hostilities. Kaljar's vertical pupils contracted. Agreed. But know this, Captain Nova, if humanity proves us right, if you become the weapons you were designed to be, the Zarkoth will not stand alone in opposing you. Many species fear what sleeps in human DNA. And many species, Mara countered, value what humanity has chosen to become. We've served as the Alliance's reconcilers for generations, not because we were designed for it, but because we chose it. She extended her hand, a human gesture of agreement. Let our choices define us, Huntmaster, not our origins. After a moment's hesitation, Kaljar extended his massive, clawed hand and clasped Mara's, carefully, mindful of the strength difference between their species. Testing time approaches. Awakened one, he said quietly, so only she could hear. The temple doors are opening across human space. Will you be shepherds or wolves, gods of war or guardians of peace? The galaxy watches and waits for your answer. The commission established at that historic meeting would work for years, uncovering fragments of a galactic history, far older and more complex than any species had imagined. Evidence of the architects, or creators, or ancient ones, as different texts name them, was found on worlds across the Alliance and beyond. The genetic markers identified in humans were discovered, in different forms, in other species as well, confirming the Zarkoth's claim that many sentient beings had been engineered for specific purposes. But for Mara Nova and the growing community of awakened humans, the most pressing challenge was not archaeological, but existential. How to integrate these newly discovered abilities into their identity without losing the values and principles that had defined humanity's role in the Alliance. 6 months after the Orion Station Accord, Mara stood on a balcony overlooking the training facility that had been established on Earth's moon. Below, in a cavernous chamber, 24 awakened humans, ranging from the survivors of Arca-4 to newly identified cases from across human space, moved through combat exercises, their eyes occasionally flashing that distinctive blue glow. They're learning control much faster than the first group, observed Colonel Torres, now the facility's head instructor. The neural pathways seem to stabilize with each generation of awakening. Mara nodded. And the side effects, the neural strain? Minimal, with proper training, Torres replied. Dr. Frost's protocols have been remarkably effective. We haven't lost anyone in the last 3 months. Dr. Frost himself approached, datapad in hand. Captain, we've completed the latest analysis of the genetic sequences. The results are fascinating. How so? Mara asked. The combat abilities, the enhanced reflexes, the tactical knowledge. They're only a fraction of what appears to be encoded in the dormant sections of human DNA. Frost's eyes gleamed with scientific excitement. "We're finding markers for enhanced healing, extended lifespan, even potential psionic capabilities that haven't yet manifested." Mara frowned. "Are you saying there are more temple doors waiting to be opened?" "Precisely," Frost confirmed. "The awakening we've experienced may be just the first stage in a much longer process. A process that was perhaps intended to unfold over generations, not triggered suddenly, as it was on Arcafa." Mara considered this, watching as the trainees below perfectly executed a complex defensive formation. One that she recognized from her own genetic memory as dating back to wars fought before humans had even developed written language. "Have you shared this with Admiral Volkov?" she asked. Torres nodded. "This morning. He's briefing the Alliance Council's Human Affairs Committee as we speak." Mara turned from the balcony. "And the Zharkoth Observer? What's his assessment?" "Sub-Hunt Master Vexthal has been surprisingly supportive," Torres said with a slight smile. "He's particularly impressed by our emphasis on defensive applications and control techniques. I believe his exact words were, 'Perhaps humans can indeed be both weapon and wielder.'" "A significant concession from a Zharkoth," Mara noted. "Their cultural mythology cast us as mindless berserkers, not thoughtful warriors. Myths often obscure as much as they reveal," Dr. Frost observed. "Even the Zharkoth's own history may contain distortions introduced over millennia of oral tradition." Mara's communication implant chimed softly. "Captain Nova," she answered. "Captain, this is Admiral Volkov. The council session has concluded. They've reached a decision regarding the Aegis Initiative." Mara exchanged glances with Torres and Frost. The Aegis Initiative, named after her ship, was the proposal they had developed for integrating awakened humans into Alliance operations, creating specialized teams that could serve as both diplomats and, if necessary, defenders. "And," she prompted, when Volkov didn't immediately continue. "Approved, with certain oversight provisions," the Admiral replied, satisfaction evident in his voice. "The first Aegis teams will be commissioned next month. And Captain, they want you to command the program." Mara felt a complex mixture of emotions: pride, responsibility, and a touch of apprehension. "I'll need to consider the offer, Admiral." "Of course," Volkov agreed. "But the Council was quite clear that they consider you uniquely qualified. No one else has demonstrated your level of control combined with diplomatic experience." He paused. "They're calling it a new era for humanity in the Alliance. The evolution from reconcilers to guardians." After the communication ended, Mara returned to the balcony, gazing down at the trainees, the first generation of what might become a new type of human, bridging the gap between their engineered past and their chosen future. "Guardians," she murmured. "Not gods of war, but protectors." "Is there a meaningful difference?" Torres asked, joining her at the railing. Mara smiled faintly. "All the difference in the universe. Colonel, gods demand worship. Guardians offer service." She watched as two trainees below helped a third who had overextended himself, supporting their comrade with evident concern. "The Zharkoth were right about our origins but wrong about our nature. We were designed as weapons. But we've become something more complex, beings capable of both creation and destruction, both violence and compassion." "And which will define us going forward?" Dr. Frost asked quietly. Mara's hand unconsciously moved to the base of her skull, where that familiar pressure pulsed, no longer alien, no longer frightening, but a part of her integrated self. "That," she said, "will be determined not by our genetic code but by our choices, not by the temple doors that others may open within us, but by what we do once we step through them." Her eyes briefly flashed that ethereal blue before returning to their natural brown. "We are what we choose to be, Doctor, today and every day that follows." Below them, the training continued. Humans learning to balance the gods of war that slumbered in their DNA with the peacekeepers they had chosen to become. And in that balance, perhaps, lay the true destiny that neither the architects who created them, nor the Zarkoth who feared them, had ever envisioned. Not conquerors or victims, not weapons or tools, but guardians of a peace they had helped to build and would now defend. The temple doors were open. The choice of what emerged belonged to humanity alone.